Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps service members on the Holocaust, diversity, human rights, and democracy. Avner is the author of over 18 books for kids and adults on leadership, emotional intelligence, and happiness. By the way, these books is where he got the nickname Captain Happiness. Avner works to build bridges between the Jewish community, the LGBTQ community, the African American community, and he's one of the few who graduated with highest honors from the non-commissioned officers and officers training in the Israeli Defense Forces, where he served as an education officer in the rank of captain. Avner has volunteered with Holocaust survivors, kids, and seniors through his travels around the world. He dedicates all his books and volunteer work to his mother, the late Avner Even-Zohar, who lost the battle against cancer in 2012, for teaching him kindness, wisdom, good deeds, and great love. Avner, we're thrilled to have you with us this evening and invite you up to begin our discussion. So let's begin the discussion with a simple question. Well, simple for me. There may not be such an easy answer.
Mic's up.
Check one. Better? So we begin with a simple question. May not have such an easy answer. The question that's on the minds of so many today is what actually led to the terrible massacre of over 1,500 Israelis on October 7th?
Thank you, Rabbi. And it's wonderful to see so many friends in the audience. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I would go back to the 20s of the 20th century. There's a theory that three fascist movements grew up of the 20s. One of them is communism with the Russian Revolution of 1917, and thank God we got rid of it in the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989 and 1990. The second one is, of course, Nazism. Hitler rising to power in 1933, and we got rid of Nazism, thank God, in 1945 with the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. And the third one is fundamentalist Islam, that, as we can all see, is alive and well in our world today. And then 9/11, Islamic State, Hamas, they all branch out of the same ideological river of jihadist fundamentalist Islam. In 2005, Israel disengaged from the Gaza Strip, basically withdrew unilaterally from the Gaza Strip. And that's something really to remember, because Israel did precisely what it was supposed to do. Precisely what the left told us all along. There is no occupation in the Gaza Strip since 2005. Israel did what it's supposed to do and more, because Israel left all the greenhouses and the houses of the settlement ready for the Palestinians to move in and start being Hong Kong or Singapore of the Middle East, and people were fantasizing about that. So I'm so upset when I hear lefties on college campuses and in the Congress saying, oh yeah, it's because of the colonialism and occupation. What colonialism? What occupation are you talking about? The left kept advocating, and still does, that if only Israel withdrew from the West Bank right now, then we will have eternal peace in the Middle East. So according to that logic, to their logic of the left, they should be the one advocating for Israel now, because that's what they always told Israel to do. And when Israel finally did it, it got 1,500 civilians and military dead, 4,000 injured, babies being burned, bodies, over 200 people that were kidnapped into the Gaza Strip, war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes against the Jewish people. So Israelis now in Israel are saying, oh, now we should pull back from the West Bank? Really? That's what you want us to do right now? Look what we've got. In 2007, Hamas was elected democratically to rule the Gaza Strip. Palestinians keep talking about it all the time, as if it makes it anything better. Yeah, Hamas was elected democratically. Great. So was Adolf Hitler. And in both cases, these were the last democratic elections in Nazi Germany and in Hamas. Hamas came with the slogan, "We defeated Israel," in 2005. That's why Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip, because of us, and our agenda is very clear. We're going to kill Jews, but before we do that, we're going to kill Palestinians. And they did. There were representatives of the Palestinian Authority, completely corrupt, that ran the Gaza Strip. And they're like, before we kill the Jews, let us kill Palestinians, because we're very good at that. That's the only thing we're good at, killing. They were not ashamed of it. They're very proud of it. And that's why they decided to take officials of the Palestinian Authority, Palestinians, not Jews, not Christians, Palestinians, and throw them over from those high rises in Gaza, so the whole community would see this is what we do to people we disagree with. We murder them, and the whole community will get to enjoy it. There is no Hamas without Iran. 70% of the budget of Hamas with terrorism always follow the money. So the money comes from Iran. And young people in Iran, they have no jobs because there's no infrastructure, because there's no budget, because all the money from the oil, we're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars, it all goes to terrorism. Always against the big devil, United States of America, and the small devil, according to them, the state of Israel. So young Iranians are like, actually they look at Israel and they say, Israel has no oil. How come the Israeli economy is doing so very well? Perhaps because the Israeli government invests some of it in infrastructure, in hospitals and school and higher education and jobs. Perhaps because in Iran they have no future, because all the money goes to terrorism. There would be no Hezbollah without Iran. There would be no Hamas without Iran. And for Hamas and for Iran, the biggest risk is not Israel, but peace. Hamas constantly fights peace. So there was a chance for peace in 1996 with the Oslo Accord. Hamas was against it and started to blow up buses all over Israel in horrific suicide bombing incidents. And now the same thing, the talk about peace with Saudi Arabia, which the US and Saudi Arabia insisted that it will include substantial steps to improve the life of Palestinians. That was against everything Hamas believes in. To improve the life of Palestinians? No. So what are we going to do? Go back to the only thing we know how to do: murder, rape, burn, and that's what they did on the 7th of October.
And we've already seen a couple of different phases of this war. We've seen the airstrikes intensify, we've seen the invasion escalate. What are Israel's goals in terms of their military operation?
Thank you. So I hear the statements of Israeli politicians that we're going to eliminate Hamas, that we're going to, and I don't think it's possible. Hamas, like Nazism, is ideology, like anti-Semitism, it's ideology. You cannot eradicate ideology. I know it's not simplistic, but sometimes people say, how did Hitler manage to systematically murder 6 million Jews? And the simplistic answer, because he could, because he had the ability to do that, and he had millions of people helping him doing that. Our goal, the goal of the State of Israel in the fight against Hamas is not to eradicate Hamas from the face of the earth. No, it is to significantly lower, eliminate, destroy the military capabilities of Hamas. So while the ideology will still exist, it's impossible to get rid of ideology, the capabilities will not be there. So people are talking now about some kind of a security zone within the Gaza Strip of like 2 miles. That there will be no Israeli army there, but nobody will be able to approach the border with Israel anymore. And also Israel, just like it does in the West Bank, will have the right for a hot pursuit, or any time that Hamas will build its capacities again, Israel doesn't have to wait for the next military operation, but would go surgically, as the United States president likes to call it, surgically, and destroy whatever needs to be destroyed in the Gaza Strip. Israel has no interest to control the life of 2.2 million Palestinians, and then just to eliminate the capacity of Hamas to commit war crimes and crimes against humanity again.
And today we can't really have a meaningful dialogue without acknowledging the reaction. How would you assess the response of the international community to the massacre?
So I know it's very easy for us to catastrophize. It's very easy for us to be upset. I think we have all the rights to do that, to be traumatized. But I was actually quite impressed in the first 2 weeks after the catastrophe on October 7th from the response of President Biden, who came to Israel to visit, actually, to be there. That's indeed unprecedented that in the midst of the war, of the fighting, the President of the United States comes, and before him came actually the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, who visited, and on his way back to the plane, I watched the videos, I couldn't believe it, when he is at Ben Gurion International Airport, the siren went off because Hamas was shooting missiles, and then the Chancellor of Germany and all his staff on the tarmac, lying down, and that's really feeling what Israelis are going through on a daily and hourly basis. And then we had the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Emmanuel Macron, our neighbor to the north, Justin Trudeau, hasn't visited Israel, but supported that. So again, one ironically would say that the world is extremely supportive of Israel when we have thousands of Jews massacred, or if we, in the 6-day war, when Israel was on the brink of extension, then Israel suddenly gets the support of the world. And people are saying, and they're right, that as time progresses and the military operation also progresses, then there's less and less support for the state of Israel. And that is true, but it's important to remember that the people who matter, these are the leaders of the free world, not only declared that they support Israel, but actually came to visit, and President Biden supported with weapons and perhaps $14 billion. So these are important things. We all suffer from the consequences of anti-Semitism in our own communities, in college campuses. This is all true, but we also have to remember that overall, this is not like the Holocaust, when the world was completely silent. Actually, we see some good things happening, and I think it's important for us to recognize at this time of need our enemies, but also our friends, people who, and world leaders who support us.
So I want to ask you a question about silence. When that hospital was hit in Gaza by an errant Islamic Jihad rocket, there were members of the United States Congress that, I know only a few, but they immediately condemned Israel and blamed them for targeting civilians. The next day, actually that night, some of us were notified that there was going to be a hoax that was about to hit the media, but afterward, the accusers went silent. There was no walking back or apology rendered for such a heinous accusation. How are we supposed to feel about that, and what can we do?
That is very true, and that's a clear case of anti-Semitism. People say that Israel is the only country in the world that is not allowed to win any war anymore. And that's really the media behaving like those old ways that, of course we believe whatever Hamas is saying, and Hamas committed crimes against humanity. So you can't take its word and compare it to the state of Israel. And many people are saying that the IDF is the most moral military. I read about the operations that they have, even in the war rooms, when they have legal advisors in uniform and not in uniform from the Israeli Department of Justice and from the Israeli military itself, and they approve each and every target. And the Israeli military actually had testimonies, you can find it online, from terrorists that were captured on October 7th, and they admit that the biggest hospital in Gaza is the Shifa hospital, and Hamas has its headquarters right underneath. It's a whole compound, it's quite big, and all of it is Hamas. And Hamas needs the hospital because they need the gasoline. They keep talking about that there's not enough gasoline in Gaza. There's plenty of gasoline in Gaza. It just goes to the ventilating system of the metro, of all the tunnels that Hamas has. So Hamas clearly needs the gasoline of the hospital. So they will get it, and not really the people who need it. The same, by the way, happened in Nazi Germany when it was defeated in the war. Hitler himself decided that gasoline would go to the Nazi Air Force and not to German people. It's the same line of thinking. Nothing is new about that. According to international law, once Hamas is underneath a hospital, or if weapons are being stored in a hospital, that actually becomes a military target. That does not mean that Israel is going to go and bomb it, because they look at the proportion, like what is the proportion of the weapons there, but based on the terrorists that were captured, they're saying Hamas headquarters is right underneath the biggest hospital in Gaza, and they also have headquarters underneath mosques, because they know Israel is not going to bomb mosques as well. So again, Canada denounced Israel officially, and Prime Minister Trudeau was very actually did not say that he was wrong, only when he was asked specifically by the leader of the opposition in Canada if basically what the Canadian government said is wrong. He admitted 2 days later that, yeah, it was inaccurate. So we've seen it all along. As people who support Israel, support humanity, and support the truth, we need to hold our elected representative accountable for that, and we need to raise our voices in social media now. It's very easy, and there are a lot of resources that you can tag and post and tag the truth about that. So we have an important role to play. We are going to have elections very soon. We are going to have presidential elections next year. We should vote for people who support us, and we should vote out people who are against us.
So it's okay to be pro-Palestinian or even anti-Jewish, but why cannot one person on that side of the fence come out and say that what happened on October 7th was reprehensible?
It's almost like a guide to the perplexed. It's almost like to see how we can identify anti-Semitism now. The first step, I think, is organizations, people who refuse to denounce Hamas at all. And there are many organizations that just wouldn't say anything, or universities that would Every time something happened to another minority group in the United States, Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth, you would see college campuses and presidents of college campuses denouncing it left and right immediately. And when something happened to the Jewish state, or when 1,500 Jews are being murdered, 4,000 injured, then they don't think it's important enough to say anything. That's for itself. The silence is a sign of anti-Semitism, and we should call them for what they do and what they don't do. The second sign of anti-Semitism is, in English we have all those beautiful words, yet, however, nevertheless, nonetheless. Whoever is saying that, like the Secretary General of the United Nations, yeah, they murdered 1,500 Jews, not nice. However, we need to remember that it didn't happen in a vacuum. That for itself is also a sign of anti-Semitism, because Hamas, saying like 9/11, nobody supported both sides. Okay, everybody said 9/11 is completely unacceptable. Al-Qaeda and Hamas, Islamic State, ISIS, it's the same thing. Cut and paste. Cut and paste. When you see their charters that they themselves publish online, it's the same ideology. Cut and paste. So if it is the same ideology, then we should denounce Hamas categorically. There's no justification. And I'm saying it as a liberal, as somebody who supported peace all those years. It's not, Hamas did not do it for the Palestinian people. And by raping Israeli women, they did not liberate any Palestinian or gave rights to any Palestinian. They did not do it for that. So it's the same like 9/11, the same like Nazism. There's no yet, however, nonetheless, no. It was wrong. It is completely wrong, 100%. Don't try to justify it with anything, because there's no way to justify a crime against humanity.
So, Camp, today I have a child that's that just finished college. I have another child that's in the middle of college, and I have a child that's getting ready to go off to college. These are scary times for Jewish students and for parents. What is your response to the Free Palestine movement that has infiltrated our college campuses?
So I always say, let's free Palestine from Hamas. Let's give the Palestinian people their freedom, their dignity. Hamas doesn't do it and can never do that. We need to free Palestine from Hamas. But college campuses, I was the director for campus division for the Jewish Community Federation in San Francisco during the second Intifada. I did my job from 2000 till 2005. And I've seen it. UC Berkeley, Stanford, I've been to all of Santa Cruz, Sonoma State, and all of them, San Francisco State. What I've learned dealing with campus communities is that the university administration, I wouldn't say that money is one of the things that they understand. I would say money is the only thing that they understand. So that's something that we just need to hit them. And I actually made a list of legislation that would like to cut federal funding to colleges that cannot, presidents of colleges, Harvard University, the president of Harvard University, could not protect Jewish students at Harvard. I think she should be terminated, and before that she should pay reparations for all she's done. The president of Stanford University, that actually I read in the New York Times, one of the professors there separating Jewish students in class and saying, insane, this is insane. We cannot ask college students alone, because that's why I'm saying we are too nice. We have to go immediately to the ADL. We should sue those universities, and we should support legislation to cut federal funding. Even a private university like Stanford University cannot be sustained without federal funding. If they're not going to get federal funding, they'll start protecting Jewish students. We cannot ask young Jewish students, like your kids, 18 years old, 19 years old, 20, 21, to fight presidents of universities who are failing to protect them. So we have the ADL, we have a Jewish community, there are many attorneys in the Jewish community, we have AIPAC, we need to pass legislation that will support, because to send them there without our support, is unfair to our own family, to our own kids. So this is something that we need to be very, very tough. And again, as somebody who was working in the Jewish community, some of the things that I faced back then, I told them this is way beyond anti-Israel. This is clear anti-Semitism. This is in the highest level of the dean of students, of the president of the university. Do not expect those kids that just graduated high school to take them to court. We are here, we'll take them to court. And there were some cases. One of them I can tell you, Nir Barakat was the mayor of Jerusalem. Now he's the minister of economics in Israel. He came to San Francisco State University, one of the most anti-Semitic universities in the country. And the BDS people and the Palestinians, they wouldn't let him speak at all. And eventually he just called some people around the stage and was trying to talk to them. The university police did not intervene. Eventually, they were taken to court and they were forced to pay a fine and to say that the university police from now on will have to protect Jewish students the same way they protect all other students. What a concept. So there is a way to get universities to do their job. Because for sure, in the Wexner Foundation withdrawing from Harvard, I think great. I think it's wonderful. I just wish they would have done it 22 years ago or 30 years ago, because that's how we need to hold universities accountable. The only language they understand.
So I don't mean to back you up to almost where we started, but would you mind speaking to the Saudis' desire to normalize relations with Israel? What was behind that? And is that what provoked the October 7th massacre?
Yes. I watched with amazement that China negotiated a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, countries that hate each other. Iran is Shiite and Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and then they attacked each other, they killed each other, they didn't have embassies, and China got this great deal between them, and I thought that Saudi Arabia would go with the US and Israel first, but Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, wanted to stick it to the United States and say, well, I'm going to go to China. Iran actually is very disappointed from the lack of progress. They said, okay, we opened our embassy in Saudi Arabia, we gave away everything for them. What did we get in return? The civil war in Yemen did not stop at all. Some would even argue intensified. So they're like, what did we get from all that? And now Saudi Arabia is negotiating with the US, and with Israel there was definitely a deep Iranian frustration with that. So that could definitely trigger, and people say the US intelligence, even the Israeli Prime Minister, admitted that Iran may have not known precisely about the date and the time. But again, if you follow the money for terrorism, 70% of the budget of Hamas comes from Iran. There will be no Iran, no Ayatollah regime, then there will be no Hamas, there will be no Hezbollah. There'll probably just be peace in the Middle East. It is so easy. So, however, one of the outcomes, because we call this talk Hope in Times of War, there is a hope that with the strong involvement of the US in the region now, that perhaps we will see the peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia much sooner than we expect. Last time there was such a great disaster, military disaster in Israel, was the Yom Kippur War, 1974, 1973, and then in 1977, President Sadat visited Israel, which was incomprehensible. I remember it as a kid, and actually, can I see a show of hands? How many people watched the movie Golda? Great. So I personally strongly recommend it. Go watch it if you can, and then I'm sure it will be streamed and you can watch it. So actually, in the movie Golda, they show that Golda herself, Golda Meir, the former prime minister at that point, met with President Sadat in 1977, and her interaction with him. It's definitely touched my heart. I think it's a very strong footage. So things could be improved, and a peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, many people say, would be the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict. I'm not sure that's the case, but it would definitely be a significant step in the right direction. So that's something that could happen.
We've had amazing support here in Augusta, and for that we are truly grateful. Hardly a day goes by without someone asking me how they can help. There's been a lot of generosity over the past few weeks. How would you suggest that we show our support for Israel from here in Augusta?
So the most important thing, you've already done. You're here tonight. This is very important to come together as a community and support Israel. So thank you so much for doing that. Some other things that I may suggest, I'm sure that you've done them, but I'm going to state the obvious. Can you raise your hand if you've been to Israel before? Great. And can you raise your hand if you know Israelis, either here or there or somewhere else around the world? That's great. So I'm sure that you've done it, but to outreach to those Israelis and say, you're not alone, we're here with you, and we support you, the more you do it for them. I, of course, did it to all my friends and family, and I still keep calling even people from my high school and everything, and they're all so very grateful. So they feel traumatized, they feel massacred, they feel alone, they feel murdered, they feel it's a terrible feeling. So when you have people from across the world saying, oh, we're with you and we're thinking about you and we support you, that means a lot, and you can do it more than once. There's so many organizations that support Israel, and this is, I have increased my monetary donations to those organizations. If you have the ability, you can do that by all means. Support it. This is a great project, and imagine like how much funding we will need to support those kids who are orphans, all the people who are injured, to rebuild those communities near the border. So this is an immense effort that unfortunately the Jewish people is very used to doing, and in a way we're very good at doing that, but we will need the help of the entire Jewish people and all our friends around the world to help us to rebuild those communities, because the pictures that we see are horrific, and we are US citizens. We vote. We need to tell our elected representative, this is what we want you to support, this is what we don't want you to support, and next year we're going to have elections, and we will remember who is with us and who is against us. This is the time of need. So it's very important to follow our local representatives here in the state of Georgia or in South Carolina, and our congressmen and women, our senators, our president, our governors. They are here to support us, to help us, specifically in college campuses, but not only. And we need to remember that we do have a lot of power just by the fact that we vote. Sure, yes, thank you.
We're going to open up to questions from the floor. We don't have a microphone out there, so we'd ask you to stand up and speak out.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Well, let's just look at something that they haven't done. I can tell you, Ronen Bergman, who writes for the New York Times and he also writes for Israeli newspapers, he said, thank God, Toda La'el, that on the morning of the 7th of October, Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, who evidently was surprised by the Hamas attack, thank God he did not attack with his commander units on the northern border, because we know how Israel was totally unprepared in the south. Israel was not doing much better in the north. Now, he missed the train, Hassan Nasrallah, because half of the Israeli military is in the north, half of it is on the south. Israel evacuated those communities. Actually, a lot of my relatives now, I call them, and they're like, oh, we have refugees. They have refugees from the north, they have refugees from the south that they host in their house, now the small apartments in Israel, now for over 3 weeks. President Biden was very clear by sending, our aircraft carriers, 2 of them already, and they're talking about 2,000 Marines that are in Israel, that Iran should stay away. So actually I spoke 2 weeks ago in Fort Eisenhower, formerly Fort Gordon, and some of the offices, we had so many officers and commission officers and service members to come and support Israel, and they had a concern about like World War III. I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe I'm naive, maybe I don't, but I do try to read and to listen a lot, and of course it is a major concern, and I'll tell you even the opposite. In the New York Times and in the Israeli media, they said that 4 days into the war, so we're talking about October 11 or 12, there started to be a lot of reports that Israeli Joint Chief and the Minister of Defense, the whole establishment, military establishment, said this is the time to destroy Hezbollah, because Hezbollah has more missiles, these are accurate missiles, their commando units are better than Hamas, and they're still going to be at our border, they still have the same ideology, the same motivation, so let's just use this opportunity. And it was Prime Minister Netanyahu who said absolutely not, because they told him that's going to give us the victory picture that everybody is looking for, that we are going to destroy Hezbollah, and people are saying it's the US administration that told him we worked so hard to isolate it to one front, and Israel will increase it to 2 fronts. This just doesn't make any sense. So even when the Israeli security establishment advocated for that, right now Hezbollah has some military activity and fighting, but it's less than a war, and they keep it this way, and they actually they lost a lot of those commando forces right on the border, because the IDF is better than them and is fully prepared. So I sincerely hope that Hezbollah will not join. They already missed their great opportunity to do that, and if this is the case, the problem of Hezbollah is not going to be resolved in this conflict, but the problem of Hamas will. So, sure, yeah. So my understanding is that the question was about the political instability within the state of Israel that started with the government, and for all intended purposes, the government, the new government of Netanyahu was sworn in, let's just say, January 1st, 2023, and suddenly they came up with this judicial reform that they wanted to do. They did not, that was not their ticket of running, with a very small margin of votes of 30,000. They had 64 members of Knesset coalition out of 120. So definitely, and they received world condemnation for trying to limit the power of the Supreme Court in Israel, and the enemies of Israel couldn't have been happier to see Israel being torn from within with this very rift. She was a very strong supporter of the Labour Party, and she did not like Begin at all. But even my grandma had to admit that he was a wonderful leader that contributed a lot to the state of Israel. And it wasn't easy for grandma to admit that, but she did. So I think there's going to be very different political landscape in Israel, and democracies change at times of crisis. Democracy. I would be able to go and visit there, and I got to talk to people, and they were all extremely supportive with the peace agreement with Israel. And I was sitting in the hotel for breakfast, and all around me, all I heard, I was with an American group, and all around me I just heard Hebrew. It was like going to the synagogue, like everybody there was Jewish. And then because there's so many groups coming from Israel to the United Arab Emirates, this is definitely very important. What you said about Egypt, that's another proof that Egypt and Jordan have no desire to support the Palestinians, because they could have done it in some still support them all the way when they are in college for the most basic right to wear a Star of David, or to support Israel, or to go to services at Hillel or at any congregation. So yeah, we need to continue to support them because we know that college campuses could be extremely hostile, and we need to support our community organizations that fight anti-Semitism, that fight bias against Israel on college campuses, because it's not over. It's not that you need to support your child or your grandchild when they go to first grade. Now we understand that it actually could be more challenging in college. Fight anti-Semitism, that fight bias against Israel on college campuses, because it's not over. It's not that you need to support your child or your grandchild when they go to first grade. Now we understand that it actually could be more challenging in college campuses. This should not be the case, but this is the reality that we live in. So. Yeah, so Israel provides the Gaza Strip with electricity and with water, but now we know what Hamas was using it for, and everything that, like everything that Hamas used in those attacks, that again are considered crime against the Jewish people, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, was actually supplied to Hamas, very often through the Israeli border, with the support of the European Union, the United States, and Qatar. And I'm ashamed to say, but I'm going to say it, on the Friday before that attack, there were still discussions within the Israeli security establishment to increase the number of workers that would cross on a daily basis into Israel. Israel allowed that because the average salary in Israel evidently is 10 times higher for those laborers than in the Gaza Strip. So those laborers would get paid in Israel, would come back to Gaza and spend the money, hopefully with their families. But we know now that Hamas abused all this money to build this empire of murder and rape and war crimes. Thank you. That's an excellent question. Yes, and I think President Herzog was right, and it's a very unpleasant reality, but I think he's right. Hamas is extremely popular within the Gaza Strip because it provides all those jobs for people, and also they are being indoctrinated to a very early age to hate Jews, to hate Christians, to believe that it's okay to murder them. So you have those kids that started to be indoctrinated in 2005, now they're almost 20 years old, or 18, so that's the only thing that they ever knew. How would they know any better? They think it's the Islamic State, Islamic education, the right thing by Islam to kill infidels, and then you become a martyr. And then also the IDF spokesman, along the lines with the president of Israel, said in Arabic, one of the generals, he said that when those Israeli women who were clearly raped, they were kidnapped into the Gaza Strip, they were carried, some of them were murdered, lynched in the streets of Gaza, and nobody was saying, excuse me, this is a crime against humanity, we're not supposed to do that, that's against Islam. So no, people were cheering. So it's terrible. It's not all not all Palestinians support Hamas, but many do.
I just wanted to share, we have a student at Georgia Tech, and the president of the university came to the fraternity house to let the kids know that they were going to increase security outside of the fraternity house, and they've had a police car parked there ever since the attack started. In addition to that, is happening.
Thank you so much, and I think we need to hear more of those stories and to see who the leaders who actually do their job and support us. And again, this is something that I did some research. Hamas was declared a terrorist organization right here in the United States in 1997. So again, if you follow the money, supporting a terrorist organization in the US financially is a federal offense. Hamas was using a lot of the footage of their own crimes against humanity. That's another thing. We talked about the Holocaust before. When you learn the history of the Holocaust, you realize that after Kristallnacht, the Nazis realized that, of course, they will continue to persecute the Jews, but it shouldn't be on the front pages of the New York Times. And then one of the reasons why they started to build the extermination camps is because they realized that when those Einsatzgruppen are massacring Jews in the forest next to the towns, everybody knows that the Jews are being massacred. So it's really hard to hide the crime. Hamas has their own logic, and they advertise their own crime. A lot of the footage that we have of those crimes is by Hamas. Not only they're not ashamed of it, they actually advertise it. Why? Because they use Telegram mostly. This is the app to raise money. To say, you know, we murder Jews, but it costs money. Help us raise money so we can murder more Jews. And then the U.S. government and the Israeli government are now trying to shut down, but it's very hard to shut down. But supporting Hamas financially is a federal offense, and that's again something that we need to remember. To say free Palestine is not, but to support a terrorist organization which Hamas is defined in the U.S. since 1997 is illegal in this country. It's a federal offense.
If I can comment on what's going on at our own Augusta University, 2 days after the war began, our Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion and other leadership at that level had contacted the co-presidents of our Jewish Student Association and the advisors and met with students, the Jewish students, to find out what the university can do to support them. They wanted to know how the students were feeling, what they were being exposed to, and have offered whatever support that they can give. They had a pizza supper last week with the Jewish students, and the provost was there and spent over an hour with the students talking. He also mentioned something that most of us were not aware of, was that Augusta University has opened a partnership with Young University, and so we are now the students wanted to know, our students wanted to know how they can help support the students at Ben Gurion University. And today I just got the contact information for leadership there, and so the students are able this week to try and provide support to them. So I've been, as a longtime faculty member at Augusta University, I'm very pleased with what's going on at our university.
Thank you so much. This is beautiful to hear, and thank you for all you do to support the students here and there. We need more of that, so thank you again.
I think I'm of course his neighbor, and I think what we feel today is this is not just a Jewish problem. This is our religious problem. It's a problem affecting all of us today now. I think we're being all targeted, and that we need to be gathering together more as a community and visiting with each other and becoming a part of each other as we go down the road, because I think this is affecting all of us greatly. I think as we get together, become all part of the same unity as we are, and God knows we're all close enough, we're all friends, we do everything together, and I think it affects all of us. It's just not you, it's all of us. And we all need to be gathered together on this situation. as it gets more and more difficult for all of us.
Thank you so much. I agree with you. This is definitely something that we need to come together more often and work as a community. So thank you for saying that.
So we decided to call this program Hope in Times of Worry. Closing comment for hopefulness, the outcomes.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just read some comments this morning from David Ben-Gurion, may he rest in peace, the founding father of the State of Israel. And in 1955, there was like one of those conferences, even back then, international conference against Israel. And he just said, it doesn't matter what the anti-Semites are saying. What matters is what the Jews are doing. And just from what I heard from you guys today, and the fact that you're here, and the leadership of our rabbi, we're doing things, and we're doing good things. And in Judaism, it's always about building and making the tikkun olam and making the world a better place. You know it, I know it, we're doing it. We probably need to do more, but let's celebrate some of the things that we have already done. So thank you all for what you're doing. Again, I'm just going to state the obvious. The national anthem of the State of Israel, Hatikva, is the hope. That is what we do, and it's very hard to predict the future, but we can have inspiration from the past. So sometimes I talk to Jewish groups and to students and everything, and it's very easy to catastrophize. And I tell them again, let's look at our own history. So in my family, my grandfather immigrated to Israel in 1938, just before the Holocaust, from the Ukraine, that time was part of Poland. And he said that he went to get his passport from the post office, a travel document, and the clerk, instead of handing it to him, just threw it on the floor and said, "You dirty Jew, get the hell out of here, and then we'll get rid of all the Jews." And my grandfather, who served in the Polish army, was very proud of his Polish identity, was shocked. He was also shocked that nobody in the post office said something. It seems very acceptable that this is the way you treat Jews, and he picked it up from the floor and got on the boat and got to Israel. But I thought to myself, on the boat, which back then the ride was like 2 weeks, what country was he leaving? Poland. And what country he was coming to? Israel was controlled by the British, back then based kind of like on the same ideology. There was the Arab rebellions against the British, because the Arabs, Palestinians, thought the Jews are so insignificant and helpless, we're going to get rid of the British and then we'll destroy the Jews. It would be so easy. So he went from one country with terrible anti-Semitism to another country that didn't look very promising. I'm happy that he did that, because my grandfather was saying, well, this anti-Semitic post office, the clerk, he was right, of course. He was saying, yeah, 2 years, 3 years later, they did get rid of all the Jews. Everybody who did not leave this town was murdered by the Nazis, by the local population, of course. So my grandfather met my grandmother, they got married. My grandfather was in the Jewish underground, in the Haganah, and then was fighting in the War of Independence, and then was an officer in the Israeli police. So he saw the light, he saw the hope, he saw the empowerment and the establishment of the Jewish state. But we can, and of course, the story of my grandmother, my grandfather and my grandmother is not unique at all. Think of your parents, think of your grandparents. Again, there was an HBO, it was all like US and the Holocaust. So they said in New York, in the 30s, there were signs on beaches like no dogs and Jews are not allowed. But anti-Semitism was strong back then. And when we look at our parents and our grandparents here in America and in Israel, they've done amazing things with very little. Today, we are doing much, much better. We're a stronger community. We have a Jewish state. Everything is far from perfect. You don't have to tell me that it's a struggle and it's difficult and there's anti-Semitism everywhere and in college campuses. Yes, but overall, we're doing much better, and we can look for inspiration from our parents and our grandparents that had it much more difficult and did amazing things. If they were able to do it, I think they expect us to do better, and I think we have the ability to do that. I already told you that maybe there will be new leadership in Israel after the war. This is a source of hope. Maybe there'll be peace with Saudi Arabia, and I think things will be better. So thank you for that.
And I hope for the local community. I just want to remind you that we cooperate very closely. You know that I cooperate very closely with the Augusta Jewish Museum, which is here in town on Telfair Street. Not only promotes teaching people about Jewish traditions and about the community, about the Jewish representation in our community, but also speaks to the Holocaust, as well as Israel, the land and its people, and they're doing really good things. So if you've not gotten on board to help with that cause, we've come a long way. We've got a ways to go, but the Augusta Jewish Museum is doing great things. So thank you to those of you who have helped out, and if you'd like more information, feel free to either be in touch with me, better yet, be in touch with Jack Weinstein, or somebody from the museum, and we can give you more information on that. Or you can pick up a flyer in the lobby. And thank you all very much for coming.